said before, yoga is something I'm really turning to as both a mental and physical approach to a lot of the injuries and imbalances I've been dealing with for a very long time. And part of that, starting something new, was obviously not knowing what you're doing. It's a willingness to play the fool to be this student. It's signing up to be, at times the worst in the room. And so I hear the instructor say this line, "You belong here," and then kind of repeat it again. For emphasis, it hit me hard, and I'll never know if this was prompted by me flailing around in the back, trying to do crow pose, or she just felt like, it needed to be expressed in the moment. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that it was exactly what I needed to hear. And in fact, it's what I've needed to hear throughout many stages of my life, which is why I think it hit so hard. I don't want to unpack it. For a second, when I moved to Massachusetts, after spending the vast majority of my childhood in the Los Angeles area, I used to joke around with my friends back in La. I'm like, this is so different that it feels like a culture shock, right? It seems so little of the world. Why do these guys not wear Dickies or spike their hair? Everyone has cargo shorts and New Balances. What's happening here? Right? But all jokes aside, when you're a freshman in high school, that's a big deal. The differences were many, and it took a while, But I acclimated, I made friends. I did the thing, but persistently in the back of my head, I felt like an outsider, making my home somewhere that wasn't really mine. Like, I didn't really belong. There came college. I went to a small private school where most of the students I knew came from prep schools, and that's somewhat of a more rigorous academic background than I did, and I decided to be a political science major, basically living in my professors' offices during their hours, when they would spend extra time helping me, show me how to organize my thoughts and put together analytical papers. It was a long and stressful learning curve, and just, before I figured it out, did fine academically, but again, never really felt like I belonged. There were some of the same sentiments with, walking onto the rowing team where many of the recruits had been doing it all their lives. Same thing in the corporate world, felt a little out of place. It was a feeling that, never prevented me from starting. I'd dive in, I'd figure it out, but there was always this lingering, fish out of water feeling that I couldn't shake. I'm kind of a tangent, but this is, one of the funniest moments for me looking back in my early 20s. I was at an interview at some insurance company in Boston, and the guy interviewing me is sitting on one end of a desk. I'm at the other. He's holding a physical copy of my resume and cover letter, not saying a word, just kind of scanning them up and down. And he slowly kind of drops them on the desk and goes, "So, Eddie, tell me more about pauses," looks back down at my cover letter. Back up at me, back down at my cover letter, then he traces the first line of the cover letter, quoting it as his finger moves across the paper. He goes, "Tell me more about how, quote, your lifelong dream is to become a data analyst." And I was like, oh my God, this guy sees right through me. "Eddie, what are you doing, man? Like this, ain't it?" And I crack myself up every time. My mind goes back there. It's the epitome of square peg round hole. And I would consistently find myself in that position. Right? But, I digress. The point is me feeling like I'm on the outside looking in has been somewhat of a theme. Even in the areas of my life where I was finding success, like I couldn't totally be there. Like, find the things that are important to me and commit to them fully. And I'd be lying if I said it. It didn't still exist today, right? I've worked like a madman for 10 years to build this company and this brand, and certainly I've seen some progress in this industry. I've gotten to surround myself with some incredible people, and every time I walk into a room with folks that I have looked up to for years, I'm grateful, which is good. But sometimes too grateful, which is my entire point, right? At some point you have to transform from looking up to into being one, to give yourself permission to belong. And yes, you need to do the work, and yes, confidence is earned. But if you don't give yourself permission to do a thing, not kind of, or sort of, but to fully, with all your heart and soul, be that thing, I think you'll always be leaving part of yourself on the shelf. It feels like, to me, a lingering defense mechanism. You can't be great if you are not all in, and part of growth has been reflecting and asking, hey, you say you're all in, but are you immersed? And that's what I want, I think, to some extent. That's what we all want to not just do it, but be it. In a million years, I don't think my yoga teacher would have expected a words. Prompted a 10-minute rant starting with my childhood on the West Coast, but man did that. Come and create a light bulb moment for me. It set the stage for such a beautiful epiphany. It's like you've been doing the thing for 10 years, grown in so many areas, but have you given yourself permission to become what you're seeking? Not kind of, but pour yourself into it. It's who you are, the environment, the people, the variables, the ups and the downs. All of it is who you are. Just imagine what that freedom would allow. Go be the thing. More fully all you have to give. So yoga class this morning showed up. Even though I suck, even though I'm learning, decide, hey, little symbolism here. No more hiding in the back of the room. Step into those neon green lights. Move towards the front. You no longer do things, even the little things, to simply scrape by or exist. Do it to be it. If you're going to do anything, do it to be it. You belong here. Help me realize what being it really is, that maybe I'd let my definition slip. Maybe my understanding wasn't wide or all-encompassing enough. And yeah, there's a line we need to walk, no question. We must be on the path to acquiring competency in something before we can make it our own. But the beauty of podcasts and Audible and books, all our media outlets instead, other people's growth and understanding can fast-track our own. I learned from this experience.
Life is too short to always feel like you are on the outside looking, and it just is. If you earned a chair at the table, be at the table. If you were let into the room, work the room. If you're spending time and energy doing something, by that thing, don't deprive yourself of that precious alignment, because it's such a beautiful thing when we allow ourselves to feel it and obtain it. But like so many things, it starts with you giving you permission.
It starts with a simple understanding. You may be new, you may be struggling, unsure. You might have a hell of a mountain to climb, a journey to travel. You might have extra work to do. You might have to add some things and cut away others.
You might have to ask yourself the tough questions and accept the difficult answers. But you do. My friend belong here. I was thinking about something recently. Something we've probably all heard before and in some cases already know. But that's why it warrants a little bit of discussion. It's not about knowing, it's about executing, which are two very different things. And so I'll start here with the idea that everything is relative, right? Someone who runs 5 miles a day and then starts hanging out with people who all run 10 miles a day is more than likely going to at least ask themselves the question, could I be running more? Should I write? That's just human nature. One's perception of normality shifts when they're around people or circumstances that stretch it. And as far as I can tell, this can be applied to anything. I remember a friend of mine, probably about 5 years ago, now asked me what my monthly revenue goal was. And I remember telling him, and he paused and looked kind of puzzled and asks, you know, why only that? Then I thought, only that, right? That's a big number. I was reaching there, but that encounter, I still remember it rocked my worldview. It's like, okay, wow, I need to, move some things around. I need to aim higher. It's an important convo for me. And I think, there's often a negative connotation we apply to this concept, right? Comparison being the thief of joy. There always being more. To acquire, it's a tool and may not utilized the right way, or internalized the right way can be unhealthy, but there's also, when utilized correctly, something not only healthy, but incredibly powerful and advantageous about it. We need to be reminded that we're capable of more. Otherwise, our worldview can't stretch. We're able to extend far beyond the reality we find ourselves in, but that fact alone does us no good. We have to position ourselves to see, to feel, to believe the more. A good friend of mine and I started reporting to each other daily. The workouts we do now, twice a day. And the funny thing is, it didn't start out twice a day, but just, the nature of not wanting to be the guy who does less. We've been friends for a while. We're all about helping each other be better in business and fitness and you name it. And you can bet when I've been running around, working all day, and I'm tired, and the little voice in my head starts
whispering, oh, well, you already got a workout in earlier. Just go really hard tomorrow. Instead, you'll be fine. But then my phone buzzes and it's a screenshot of his workout stats. It's like, nope, I have to find time to do it. He's tired, he has a job and a family. He wants to crack a beer or grab a burger. But he didn't. And the fact that he reached for more makes me realize, hey, so makes me ask, what are my targets? Are they big enough? Right? And that's been incredibly effective prompting, this conversation and making me realize, there's something to this. How can I position myself so that I have line of sight to that precious abundance in the other areas of my life that I deem important? How can I nurture the relationships I have that serve as a reminder that there is always another level? How can I keep at the forefront of my mind that there are online creators helping millions of people a day? There are business owners making millions of dollars a month. And it's not that I'm not proud and grateful. I'm both of those things. Instead, I love the journey. I love the challenge of seeing what I can become. And know that our default is to get so consumed by the current way of things. We started thinking, hey, maybe that's all there is. We forget to keep our eyes up. Music. And so, a few things I plan on doing, I'll share them, and maybe they'll prompt some ideas in your head for whatever your values are, whatever you're trying to improve recently. I set up a mastermind quarterly with some buddies I have that are investors and business owners. Simple to report. Growth, revenue, future plans. As someone who just loves to write and creating, it's easy for me to put all that stuff second. So this is gonna hold me accountable. Fitness! I already mentioned. This one's new. I have a few friends that I started meeting up with just to get out to unwind, do nothing business related at all, which is just as critical as work. Right? I have to make time to soak in the world around me, and there are others as well. But you get the idea, right? It's teaming up with those people in my life where our values overlap and we can help each other when the saying goes, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But now imagine taking that a step further, reaching out to those people and teaming up to help position each other to succeed. Music, you get the accountability, the camaraderie. You become a team looking to get the most of your time on this planet. I have stated many times that my belief is the pieces exist around us to do so many things, incredible things, monumental things. But how we mix, match, and utilize those pieces, the world around us determines that. So, let's ask the question, what is a life well lived to me, and how can I tangibly position myself to obtain it? How can I help those I care about obtaining? Those are some powerful questions and will ultimately lead to some incredible growth. For Jack Welch has said, control your own destiny, or someone else will. And I'm passing this along today as I believe it's one of the most important things to understand, not a once and done thing, but a recurring question. Where have I relinquished control? How can I recapture what matters most as the world around us shifts, slips, and slides? So does our grasp on it, which is why I find this continuous self-reflection so powerful. I have a flight this afternoon, which means I have a hard deadline and a lot I need to do before I head down to the Miami airport. I've been traveling a lot recently, which means I've been finding myself in this situation a lot recently, and here's what's become abundantly clear to me. As I work through the logistics on travel days, I'm exponentially more productive than on my typical quote-unquote work day. I wake up with an urgency and sense of control over my time that apparently is lacking on, say, your typical Tuesday, and I'm shot out of a cannon today, for example. I've worked out, written and recorded 2 speeches counting this one, recorded short video content sent to my editors. Plan next week's topics, might even have time to go live and hang out for a few minutes. And I'm sitting here thinking, you know, dude, if I had a flight at noon every day, I'd be worth $500 million by June. What is the difference between today and every other day? Simple mind. Approach towards it, how I utilize and control the resources at my disposal. This is a powerful, powerful thing to realize. You know, it begs the question, how can this urgency be manufactured? Because that's what it's about, right? Setting up the parameters so that they are most conducive to our success. Music. Another life-changing quote I came across a few years ago was, "You are your own experiment," meaning life is about testing things, trying different methods, they say exploring different approaches, and also having the discipline to observe their outcomes, or the why so, that you can use that information to position yourself
For success, that info is as good as gold, one understanding and two implementing. So that, we're not pushed back and forth by external factors like leaves in the wind, but are instead creating our own ideal circumstances. These, let's just call them travel days, have helped me realize how much power, energy, control I relinquish on a typical day. And most importantly, how I can change that. Music, time for a new experiment. Let's try approaching every day, like there's a hard cutoff at noon. How? I'm not sure yet. I'll test and explore until something clicks. But there's definitely some information worth noting. I've picked up my phone 0 times today, which is obviously valuable. I've second-guessed my messaging and communication a lot less. Don't have time to waste on the small things. Nope. Not when you fly out at noon. This is information I'll take with me. Little nuggets of wisdom that I've been able to collect. And so I'll finish with an important reminder that this is not so much about efficiency as it is about awareness and a willingness to adapt, right? Like becoming a robot is not the goal here. But the discipline to step outside yourself and look at how you're spending your time so that you can make it more valuable and meaningful. Is we let the outside world dictate far too much, and we don't even realize. We just sort of move through it. We relinquished control because we had no idea it was ours to take. We are very often unaware of the power that we have over ourselves, our circumstances, and our lives in totality. We're unaware of just how much value we walk.
Right by the opportunity is not days, weeks, or months away, it lives with you. Now every breath, every step, every decision, you just have to open your eyes and invite it in. Music the other day, I was on a podcast with Evan Carmichael, who's a YouTuber, an entrepreneur. And we were talking with Shaquille, who was the host, about the mental side of the entrepreneurial journey, how we set goals, but also prepare ourselves for the inevitable adversity associated with growth. And one question Shaquille asked us was, where do we see ourselves in 5 years? Okay, so, side note. I have a unique relationship with this question as someone who was unsure in experimenting with their career, right, for much of their adult life. I never quite knew how to answer it. It's like two things can be true at once. It's a very reasonable question, but I also didn't like answering it, right? I hated it to my core. You could even say I could never really articulate why. It just made me uneasy, right? Like, 5 years in a lifetime, how am I supposed to know? And again, no knock on the host at all. It's a very common and practical question. I'm glad he asked it because it opened the door to a pretty cool conversation. So anyway, he asked the question, and I'm thinking, oh man, like, how am I gonna approach this? And before I said a word, Evan blurts out, look, if you know exactly what you're going to be doing in 5 years, you're thinking too small. In that comment, to say it made me happy was an understatement. It was like, thank you for saying what my mind has been trying to piece together for a decade and a half. If you know exactly where you're going to be, of course you're limiting yourself. There's just too much predictability, too much routine process, and not enough experimentation, not enough life. Why? Because growth is unpredictable. It takes us places we didn't expect, shows us things we didn't anticipate, it unveils truths and minor miracles about ourselves that we, let's face it, never would have seen had we been dismissive of all life's variability and opportunity. Now, does this mean we don't move with conviction in a general direction? Does that mean we don't have goals or ambitions? No, I certainly don't think it does. Right? You can't hit targets? You don't aim for that will always be true. It merely means life is not about being perfect in bringing about a particular result. It's about making adjustments throughout your pursuit of meaning. If you feel closer to your purpose, when you change the medium, then change the medium. If it means, your heart tells you left is where the value lies and not right, then go left, right. To me, it's essentially reminding us
that life is not a black and white yes or no, checklist or test. It's a game, and you have to grant yourself the freedom to play. You have to give yourself permission to grow 4 and 5 years. And how 5 years ago, I wasn't even thinking about creating media the way I do now. With the amazing team of people that helped me. I wasn't speaking on stages. I hadn't crafted my creative style. I didn't know the people I know now who introduced me to not only new people, but new ideas. These are characters, they're stories, they're opportunities that present themselves only as you immerse yourself in the journey. And I was, okay, not knowing exactly, but merely moving towards the general direction. The most important decisions were, looking back, not what I said yes to, but what I said no to as I moved through life. Experimenting, learning, growing. I was able to craft something that worked for me, not other people, not what's in books. There's no roadmap. No, it's an experiment, and this is more of the reassurance I would have wanted during those years from an older version of myself. Like, it's okay to not know exactly where you'll be, just promise yourself this. If it matters to you, you'll find a way to move to it, with it, towards it. And if it doesn't, then let it go. Surround yourself with people that lift you up. And if they don't let them go, you'll hear a lot of talk about the right way to do things, especially in this information age. Those ideas and decisions may have in fact been right, but they also may be wrong for you. Try, test it out, and if not, let it go. The experiment that is your life is the reward. It's a luxury. It's such a beautiful ride. Don't box yourself in because of some made-up theoretical plan. Don't avoid the path to a new world because I check my list, and this doesn't line up with where I said I'll be. February 23rd, 2028. Now go live your life. Do your best to exist in that place, the intersection of what you love and what adds value. Let it bend. Let it transform. Let it teach you things about yourself and the world. There aren't correct ways to live, but I think there certainly are some wrong ways, and that's time spent out of obligation, adhering to a story that means nothing to you. Push gives back. Your footsteps in the aggregate will reveal truths and tell stories you could never have even dreamed up. It's in going that your book is written. And just a friendly reminder, people don't read books for the last page, the ending. No, they read them for that stuff in the middle, right? The journey. So next time I'm asked what my 5-year plan is, I'll probably say same as my 10, 20, and 30-year plan. I don't know, but I can tell you. I won't lose sight of that North Star, the one that calls my name. But at the same time, I won't be afraid to wander into the night dance in the moonlight. Even get lost in the shadows from time to time. Growth is directly correlated to one's willingness to push forward into the dark and well into the darkness we shall go. Music. The other day I was sitting in Miami traffic looking out the window, and it dawned on me how interesting that human beings haven't solved for this. Like, this is a major annoyance in a lot of people's lives now. We put human beings on a rocket ship. We've navigated them beyond the Earth's atmosphere. We've landed them on the moon, but still are unable to effectively get around between 4 and 7 p.m. on weekdays. It's just kind of interesting to realize now there are very practical reasons for this. Sure, not to mention people studying and invested in the problem. And I think most noteworthy, I'm not even saying one is more valuable than another. This is merely a thought experiment. We get the results where we place our attention. We valued going to the moon. Because of this, humans walked on the literal moon. And we're so used to this having happened that its shock value isn't quite there, right? But for a species who 100 years ago was traveling by a horse and buggy, that's pretty impressive now. I just think it's a cool reminder that where we place our focus is where we'll get our positive results. We can change everything if we place a spotlight on it. That begs the question, where are you placing your spotlight? Because John Maxwell said, nobody ever went up a hill on accident. There was intentionality which gave life to focus and action planning growth. We only evolve or we shine. That spotlight, or as I've said in previous episodes or videos, what you water grows. Music. I've certainly spent my fair share of time angry, annoyed by things that have, by no coincidence, given zero effort to fixing now. When you do nothing to solve a problem, all you can cling to is the ability to complain about it. If you're not putting energy and resources there, you most likely won't win. Music. Some of the best advice I got from a friend a few years back was to highlight the things that matter to you and measure them, because this allows you to be aware, to be intentional with your action. It's deciding which handful of things are going to be your quote-unquote moon landing and then watching over them like they are precious, you know? Let's say a goal of yours is to increase your net worth. If you're looking at your bank account every day, you're much more likely to make better monetary decisions than someone who keeps their finances in the dark because they hate thinking about it. There are deliberate actions that must take place to bring about that change. When I look at, say, YouTube, I tend to know a substantial amount about my metrics because I really care about the channel and its growth and its impact. I watch it and I monitor it. Things dip. I need to know why. If they took a sudden upswing and they're great, I need to know why. If success on a platform is my metaphorical moon landing, I'm locked into every up and down. I have to understand what's going on so I can make the necessary adjustments to grow. And then when the growth happens after time has elapsed, I can think, in my own little world. That was space travel. I was driving that metaphorical horse and buggy not all that long ago, but I stayed locked in. And this may seem simple, and it is, but for what it's worth, my biggest breakthroughs always tend to be, I've exhausted a lot of energy, and in some cases, even paid, a decent amount of money to learn the simple things. Music. Nothing is that complicated. We just think it is, which is why we do nothing, and then complain about the delta between the real and the ideal. But I'm here to tell you that if you decide on a few things that matter to you, and then measure their progress, allocate the energy to moving along with them where you'll be in months or years from now, will astound you. It will be breathtaking. But you have to be willing to peel back the curtain and immerse yourself in it. Prove to yourself that, sure, it might feel big and complex, but once you give something that time and attention, it becomes clear, pretty quickly, how simple it all is. What's one thing you can do every day and each meaningful category in your life that will get you closer to where you want to be? If you watch over that process and you adjust along the way, the amount of opportunity available, the amount of change you'll create is unbelievable. And someday to others, on the outside looking in, your progress will seem out of this world. Larger than life, it will appear a moon landing. But you'll know it wasn't the miraculous, it was just a simple decision to give it time and attention. You watered it. And so it grew. Music. The message in this episode was inspired by some background music, the very music playing behind my words right now, actually. I have this thing for acoustic tracks. I just feel like they completely changed the dynamic of a story, but I digress. I was writing earlier, opened my notes, found a topic I wanted to discuss. It's been about 2 hours on it, but as I listened to this song and looked over my words, I just felt like what I'd written didn't do it justice due to that feeling, where maybe it's your work or any other aspect of life, really, where you know what you have is good enough. Like, no question, good enough to get by, maybe even better than average, but at the same time, you have this little voice in your head. Almost guilt, because you know, there is within you something better. Like, sure, this will get you through the gate, just know you're conceding something, and it's that curiosity, that question, what could I have created and given to the world, that just pulled me in a little deeper. Music. I was recently in Cincinnati. One of my oldest friends, Mike, we met in 4th grade. We've been in touch ever since, and we were having dinner talking about how we were always in trouble back in the day. And I mean, we were always in trouble as kids. Went to a little Catholic school in Southern California, and the way they disciplined us back then was they had this system where if you were talking when you shouldn't be, you'd get a T for talking, and that T basically counted as 1 strike. If you did something besides talking that was inappropriate, you'd get an I, which I presume is for inappropriate, and I's counted as 2 strikes, and we couldn't really remember what the system was completely, but I think we landed on, if you got up to 7 total strikes before the end of the week, you'd get a note sent home to your parents, and we were going back and forth, kind of disagreeing on the effectiveness of that system. The classic of carrot versus stick argument, Mike thinks it was a great system, and certainly there was a lot of value there. It kept us in check to an extent. But I saw it differently in the sense that all it did at times was rearrange incentives. You know, like, if it's Friday afternoon and I'm sitting there, I only have one T for the week.
You bet the teacher turns around. I'm throwing that apple-shaped stress.